So I want to turn to my next little topic today. I want to hit on, we've had in the show before, we had these two young men who came to America from Venezuela. And they came here in part because, or they came here maybe to go to school, but they have stayed, and what they're doing now is touring the country, trying to tell people you don't want America to become socialist. They're telling from their firsthand life story what it's like to live in Venezuela, how the country collapsed under socialism, the utter and pure misery that the majority of Venezuelans live in. So these two young men have been doing this. Well, I found another voice, a young woman, and she's also from Venezuela, and she's talking about and trying to help people understand that what we're watching the leftists permit in our country. We're watching the Antifa, the BLM Inc. You have the radical left, not just burning buildings, destroying property, burning cars, stealing, literally murdering police officers and others, but you have them just on a rampage, destroying statues, destroying the symbols of our history, our symbols that tell the American story. I want you to play a short clip this young lady has done. I asked Matt the Wonderful to play that. We'll talk about it a little bit more.
Why do I even worry about some silly little statues coming down or some silly little street names changing? Why do I care? It's because the last time I didn't care about this, I was a teenager. I have already lived through this thing when I was living in Venezuela. Statues came down. Chavez didn't want that history displayed. And then he changed the street names. Then came the curriculum. Then some movies couldn't be shown on certain TV channels. And so on and so forth. You guys think it can't happen to you? I've heard this so many times. But always be on guard. Never believe something can't happen to you. You need to guard your country and your society, or it will be destroyed. We didn't believe it could happen to us. Us Venezuelans, Cubans warned us. And we're like, Venezuela, we know what freedom is like. That's not going to happen here. Yet it happened. And there's clearly a lot of people wanting to destroy the U.S.
Lady, that was actually a video from TikTok, which is not one of those apps I use. But she's doing the same thing that other young Americans are doing, people now in America who grew up in Venezuela, trying to say, America, wake up. Do not let America go socialist. She's talking about, which why I want to hop on talking with her about her a little bit today. She's talking about the tactic of tearing down statues, renaming streets. All of it can seem as though in our country, they seem like easy concessions. They seem like, if we will just agree to remove all symbols of the Civil War, for example, if we just remove all those symbols, then everything can be peaceful again. And we're not going to have riots in our streets. We're not going to have citizens, destroying buildings and burning cars and stealing property and destroying people's businesses they spent their whole life building. All that will end if we just concede that they can take down statues. Okay, or maybe take down statues and change the names of certain streets. Okay, no more streets named after anyone that the left has designated as no longer patriotic, as no longer tolerable. So that they want to rename the streets all sorts of things that symbolize the radical left, that symbolize radical leftism. Again, an easy concession to make. It can seem to people like, it's just a simple concession. That's all they want. If we just give in to this, then we can buy peace. And I've been on this theme, and I'm going to stay on this theme for as long as the problem seems to be staring us in the face. It is just like negotiating with terrorists. It's just like it. Ronald Reagan was exactly right when he said back when he was president, we don't negotiate with terrorists. Not just because they're bad people, and terrorists are bad people, but because it's never enough. There are never enough concessions that you can make. There are never enough things you can concede, and then they will back down. Those things, that is factually inaccurate. She's pointing out, it's just a step along the way. This young girl from Venezuela, the next step you do, okay, we're going to let statues go down, and we're going to change names of streets, and of course, curriculum public school must comply with what the leftists want in this country. And she's getting at what so many totalitarians have done throughout the, not just centuries, but millennia, but certainly in her country, in Venezuela, Chavez, the people forget who they are. They forget their history. They forget the whole of who they are as a people, how we got here, where we are today. All the people know is what the government tells you when you get up in the morning. And that government, that totalitarian leftist Marxist government that has now destroyed Venezuela, one of the most productive, free, prosperous countries in South America, destroyed in the span of 20 or 25 years because people didn't see it coming. People didn't think the little concessions they made were going to mean anything, that we can concede these things and then we could get to go back to normal and we can still be Venezuela and we can still have our freedom and prosperity. And she's saying it doesn't work that way. Every concession you make to leftists only causes them to bring more concessions until you've lost your collective love of your history, your understanding of who you are as a people, even street names. The answer to all of these demands from the left in America needs to be no, 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 and no. And she's making this point because she's living here and she feels like the deja vu. She saw this happen in Venezuela. Do not let it happen here. I'm going to go back, by the way, in the next few weeks at the two young men I had in the show before, if you happen to see that show, but they were from Venezuela, and they both were really articulate, explaining what they are trying to do in their conversations in America, and they're trying to talk on college campuses. And because right now it's so trendy on college campuses to be a leftist, to express kind of a warm, fuzzy feelings about socialism and to be utterly anti-American and anti-capitalist and anti-freedom and anti-free markets and anti-entrepreneurship. The cool thing on campus is to hate everything that made America great and prosperous and free, that lifted even the poorest among us to a better lifestyle that almost everyone in the world has. That's what capitalism and freedom have done. And yet, if you go to college campuses, it's barely acceptable to even talk about the beauties, the virtues of freedom and free markets. So, I wanted to play her tape. I urge you to share it with your friends. And I've been talking in this show a lot recently about the idea of sharing things with your friends. If you aren't comfortable sharing ideas and having a debate, a political debate, try sharing videos. Just share, say, hey, I saw this video. What do you think about this? You can share that one. You can share others I've played on the show and others I will play over the next few weeks. But it's really, and months, it's really important to understand there are voices in our culture trying to tell us, trying to wake us up, help us see that we are capitulating our country, capitulating the values of America, all with the false notion that somehow, if we just surrender enough to the left, then we get to have America back. We'll never get America back. We will lose America if we continue conceding to the demands of the Antifa radical Marxist socialist communists who have taken over today's Democrat Party. If you don't think they've taken over today's Democrat Party, name me one Democrat who is in the slightest criticizing the behavior of the left, in the slightest coming on publicly in public speeches and saying, hey, wait, we really can't be doing this. We better back down. We better back off here. You can't find a Democrat to do it. The Democrats own these riots. The Democrat Party they own these riots. They own the destruction. They own the property damage. They own the loss of life. They own the loss of the innocent life of police officers and other innocent bystanders. The Democrat Party owns it because they won't condemn it.